What would you do if your last meal was the only thing standing between you and hunger? For Emma Clark, a 25-year-old waitress barely hanging on, the answer would change not only her future, but the lives of countless others. The story begins in a place most people would pass without a second glance. The Rusty Fork Diner. A squat brick building sitting on the edge of a fading Midwestern town, its neon sign flickered with a stubborn hum, fighting off the early dusk of autumn. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of fried bacon grease that never seemed to leave the sharp clang of plates against chipped coffee mugs and the sharp, cheerful ring of the doorbell that chimed whenever someone came in. Cracked leather booths lined the walls, their stuffing spilling like tired secrets, while a jukebox in the corner coughed out songs older than Emma herself. For Emma, this was not just a workplace. It was her battlefield. Day after day, she fought here against exhaustion, against numbers written in red ink, against a world that never seemed to give her a break. She wore the same faded uniform each morning, its polyester fabric holding the stubborn smell of hash browns and burnt toast, no matter how many times she washed it. Her shoes were worn thin at the heels, her back ached constantly. But her smile, that fragile mask she wore for customers, had to stay in place. Rent was 2 weeks overdue. The electricity bill sat unopened on the kitchen counter, another reminder of how fragile her balance was. Meals were rationed with ruthless precision. A can of beans stretched across 3 dinners. A loaf of bread bought on discount was trimmed into thinner slices each day. She lived paycheck to paycheck, tip to tip, clinging to the hope that tomorrow might bring a few extra dollars in her apron pocket. But Emma's struggle was never just for herself. At home in their small apartment above a laundromat was her younger brother Noah. Just 12 years old, with a bright imagination that painted entire fantasy worlds in the pages of his sketchbook. Noah was both her reason to keep going and the heaviest weight she carried. Noah was fighting a rare muscular condition, one that stole his strength a little more each month. The doctors had offered a sliver of hope, an experimental treatment program at a private clinic. It wasn't a cure, but it could buy him time, precious years of mobility, independence, and childhood he so desperately deserved. The price of that chance was clear and cruel. A deposit of $3,600. Emma counted the days like a prisoner marking time on a cell wall. The deadline loomed just weeks away. Every crumpled dollar bill, every coin scraped from her tips, went into a plain white envelope hidden beneath her mattress. At night, when Noah was asleep, she'd pull it out and count the money under the dim glow of a bedside lamp. Always close, but never close enough. She whispered promises into the dark, telling Noah he'd run again, that he'd laugh without pain. Promises she wasn't sure she could keep. And so Emma fought against hunger, against fatigue, against the hopelessness that clawed at her chest. She fought with nothing but a waitress's smile and a heart that refused to give up. She had no way of knowing that the choice she was about to make over something as small as a sandwich and a bowl of soup would set her life and her brother's on a course neither of them could ever have imagined. The Rusty Fork Diner was a place where dreams went to die, slowly buried under grease-stained menus and the endless hiss of the griddle. For Emma Clark, it was both lifeline and prison. She depended on its meager pay, yet every shift drained a little more of her spirit. At the center of it all stood Mr. Grant, the manager. He was a broad-shouldered man with thinning hair slicked back by habit, not vanity. His shirts were always tight at the buttons, his apron permanently smudged with old stains. He had a way of barking orders that made the walls themselves seem to flinch. To him, employees were no different from the cracked plates or the sticky coffee pots, replaceable parts in a machine that only mattered if they made him money. "Clark, table 5's been waiting. You walking through molasses or what?" He would growl, never bothering to lower his voice. Customers smirked, embarrassed for her, but Mr. Grant never cared. He thrived on that humiliation. Then there was Dana, Emma's co-worker. Dana was only a few years older, but the lines around her mouth carved her into someone who seemed decades ahead. Her ponytail was pulled tight, her nails sharp and immaculate, the one indulgence she allowed herself. If Mr. Grant was grease and bark, Dana was vinegar and bite. "You're too nice, Emma," she would sneer between gum snaps, leaning against the counter, while Emma hurried past with heavy trays. "Mark my words, kindness in this place'll get you fired faster than spilled coffee." People don't tip smiles. They tip attitude. Emma never responded. She didn't have the energy to fight cynicism with optimism, not when her body already ached from 12-hour shifts, and her mind never stopped racing over unpaid bills. The customers only made things harder. Some treated her like wallpaper, never once lifting their eyes when they ordered. Others quibbled over change, accusing her of shorting them a dime. And the stingiest of them all were the ones in suits who looked like they could afford to leave a generous tip, but slid away with only $1 or $2 on the table, as if parting with more would wound their pride. Emma bore it all with that fragile mask, the tired smile that never quite reached her eyes. But behind the counter, where no one could see, she often pressed a hand to her stomach as hunger gnawed at her. The diner's staff meal was supposed to sustain her, but more often than not, she pushed half of it aside, saving it in foil to bring home to Noah. When her body begged for nourishment, she filled her stomach with ice water, convincing herself it was enough. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the fryer, the ceaseless jingle of the doorbell. It was a symphony of monotony that she endured because she had no other choice. While Dana rolled her eyes at every customer and Mr. Grant barked like a drill sergeant, Emma kept moving plate after plate, hour after hour. And yet, in the cracks of that relentless grind, there was something unbreakable about her. A quiet resilience that no insult, no sneer, no lousy tip could extinguish. She wasn't naive. She knew the world could be cruel, knew the diner was just one small reflection of that cruelty. But she refused to let it harden her. That refusal, that stubborn kindness, was the one thing that set Emma apart in a place where bitterness was the air most people breathed. It was also the one thing that would soon put her on a collision course with fate. It was a gray October afternoon when the bell above the diner door gave a soft, uncertain chime. A gust of cold air swept in with the sound carrying the sharp bite of fallen leaves and early frost. The customers barely looked up, but Emma did. Framed in the doorway stood an old man. His coat was frayed and several sizes too big, its fabric threadbare from years of wear. He clutched a faded tweed cap in hands that trembled not from age alone, but from the raw chill outside. His eyes, pale, watery blue, scanned the menu board above the counter with a look that pierced straight into Emma's chest. It was hunger. Hunger so deep it carved out the hollows of his cheeks and made his shoulders fold inward, as though the world had already decided to forget him. Mr. Grant's head snapped up from behind the register. "Hey, Pop," he barked, his voice dripping disdain. "This isn't a shelter. You buy or you leave." The man flinched at the words, as though they were a physical blow. He muttered something too soft to catch, already turning for the door. Emma's body moved before her brain caught up. "Wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, though it carried across the diner. She picked up her tray from the back booth, where her staff meal sat untouched, a thin bowl of chicken soup and a sandwich made with dry bread and a single slice of turkey. To anyone else, it was hardly a meal. To her, it was the only food she would have until morning. Don't even think about it. Dana hissed from behind the counter, chewing gum lazily as she polished silverware. "Grant'll have your hide. You can't just hand out food to every stray that wanders in." Emma ignored her. She walked toward the man with her tray balanced in nervous hands, her heart pounding. The closer she came, the more he seemed to shrink, as if expecting her to scold him or force him out. She stopped in front of him, the soup steaming faintly, the sandwich trembling in her grip. "Sir," she said gently, "are you hungry?" His watery eyes darted to hers, then back to the door. After a long pause, he gave a small reluctant nod. "I was about to have my lunch," Emma said, forcing brightness into her tone. "But I'm not that hungry. I'd hate for this to go to waste. Won't you share it with me?" The lie caught in her throat. She was starving. Her stomach had been twisting in knots since sunrise. But she smiled anyway, and she held the tray out toward him. The man's lips parted, his voice rough with disbelief. "I can't take your food, miss. You'll go hungry." "I'll be fine," she replied firmly, though her body ached for every crumb. "Please, sit. Eat." His hand shook as he set his cap on the table, lowering himself onto the cracked vinyl booth, with a sigh heavy as stone. Emma slid the tray between them, pushing the soup toward him. For a moment, he only stared, as if the bowl might vanish. Then, with trembling fingers, he lifted the spoon and tasted it. A shudder ran through him. Not of cold, but of relief. His eyes closed, and when they opened again, they glistened with tears. He ate slowly at first, then with more urgency, careful not to spill a drop. Emma picked up half the sandwich, chewing it slowly, pretending she wasn't counting each bite. When the meal was gone, he leaned back with a faint smile, a trace of color returning to his cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You have no idea what this means." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and dark. He set it on the table between them, a wooden chess piece, a knight. Its surface was worn smooth, nicked with age, polished by countless touches. "I don't have much," he said quietly, "but I want you to have this. A knight can change the game with one unexpected move. Remember that." Emma lifted the piece, its weight surprising in her palm. She tried to hand it back, but he shook his head. "No," he said, eyes steady now. "It's yours." With that, he rose slowly, steadier than before, gave her a nod of gratitude, and walked back into the cold, and the bell above the door chiming his departure. Emma sat frozen, the empty soup bowl before her, the wooden knight clutched in her hand. Her stomach growled in protest, but inside her chest a warmth spread, a warmth that hunger could not steal. She had no way of knowing that this single act, born from compassion stronger than her own need, was the first move in a game far bigger than she could imagine. 7 days passed. The Rusty Fork diner had seen its usual share of arguments over undercooked eggs, impatient truckers demanding coffee refills, and Mr. Grant's barked orders echoing off grease-stained walls. For Emma, every shift blurred into the next. Her envelope of savings was growing inch by painful inch toward Noah's treatment. Each crumpled bill represented another skipped meal, another hour of exhaustion she forced herself to endure. Then came the storm. The rain arrived, like punishment, slamming against the diner windows in furious sheets. Wind howled through the cracks in the old building, rattling the neon sign until its flicker seemed ready to die. Customers huddled in their booths, shoulders hunched, while damp coats dripped onto tile floors. Emma worked silently, balancing plates heavy with meatloaf and mashed potatoes moving like a shadow through the chaos. The bell above the door chimed faintly, almost drowned by the roar of rain. Emma looked up. Walter Hayes stood in the doorway. His coat, already thin and ragged, clung to his frail frame, soaked dark with water. His cap dripped steadily, a small puddle forming at his feet. His lips trembled as if every word cost him strength. He didn't glance at the menu this time. He looked only at Emma, his pale eyes pleading. Mr. Grant spotted him instantly. His scowl deepened. Not again, he growled, storming out from behind the counter. "Evans, get him out of here. I told you once this place isn't a flophouse." Donna leaned on the counter, chewing her gum slowly, her eyes glittering with cruel amusement. Told you, Emma. Be too nice and you'll get burned. Let's see how you handle this one. Emma froze a tray, trembling in her grip. She couldn't throw him back into that storm. Walter's body shook so violently, she feared he might collapse right there on the wet tile. Please, he whispered, his teeth chattering. Just for a minute. To get warm. Emma set down her tray and stepped between Mr. Grant and the old man. Her heart pounded in her ears. He's freezing, she said. All I'm asking is to let him sit. He won't bother anyone. No, Grant snapped, crossing his arms. Every minute he sits in a booth is money I lose. Paying customers only. Get him out. Emma's throat tightened. Then with a sudden burst of desperation, she spoke, I'll pay. Take it out of my tips. $10. That covers the booth, doesn't it? Grant's eyes narrowed, weighing her words. $10. Right now. Emma reached into her apron pocket. Her fingers closed around the morning's earnings, a handful of crumpled bills meant for Noah's envelope. With a shaky breath, she peeled off a $10 note and slapped it onto the counter. Grant snatched it up without another word, satisfied in his petty victory. Dana smirked. Emma guided Walter to the back booth. She brought him a steaming mug of hot water, setting it gently in his trembling hands. He held it as though it were treasure, the heat seeping into his frozen fingers. For a long moment, he simply breathed in the steam. Then he looked at her eyes, glassy with gratitude. It is never just money, he murmured, his voice thin but steady. Not to those who have none. You gave me warmth when the world gave me cold. Emma swallowed hard. The weight of the missing $10 pressed down on her chest. It was 2 hours of labor, 2 hours closer to Noah's future. And now it was gone. But as she watched Walter cradle the mug, shoulders relaxing for the first time that night, she forced herself to hold on to hope. Somehow, some way, she told herself the sacrifice would be worth it. The morning had started with a rare glimmer of hope. After months of sacrifice, Emma Clark finally slid the last handful of crumpled bills into the white envelope hidden beneath her mattress. She counted once, twice, a third time, just to be sure. 36 crisp hundreds, 30 singles stacked neatly, and a few tens folded tight. $3,600, the number burned in her mind like salvation. She pressed the envelope to her chest, whispering into the silence of their apartment. We did it, Noah. You're going to get your treatment. I promised you and I kept it. Noah's thin face lit up his sketchbook, sliding off his lap as he reached for her hand. Does that mean I'll get stronger? He asked, hope trembling in his voice. Emma smiled even as her eyes stung with tears. Yes, baby brother. You will. With that promise warming her heart, she walked into the diner for her shift. For once she felt lighter, as though the weight of the world had shifted ever so slightly. But the rusty fork had no mercy. By noon, the lunch rush crashed in like a tidal wave. Orders piled up, coffee overflowed, customers shouted for checks and refills. Mr. Grant's voice cracked like a whip across the room, barking commands, his face red with frustration. Donna smirked from the counter, enjoying every second Emma struggled to keep up. Then through the chaos, the door chimed. Walter Hayes shuffled in. But this time, he looked different. His shoulders sagged lower, his skin pale and clammy, his breath rasping. Before Emma could reach him, he staggered, clutched the edge of a booth, and collapsed to the floor. Walter, Emma cried, dropping her tray plates, shattering at her feet. She knelt beside him, pressing her hand to his forehead. He was burning with fever, his body trembling uncontrollably. Around them, customers froze. Some muttered, others looked away, unwilling to get involved. Mr. Grant stormed over, his voice booming above the silence. What in God's name is this Evans? Get him out of here. Now he's not our problem. Emma's eyes flashed with desperation. He's sick, Mr. Grant. He needs help. Just let him rest until he's steady. I'll call the clinic. No, Grant's face turned purple with rage. I'm running a diner, not a charity ward. Get him out before the customers see this circus. Emma rose to her feet, planting herself between Walter's frail body and her furious boss. No, I won't throw him out into the street like garbage. He's a human being. The diner fell silent. Every eye was on her. Grant's jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he spat the words that would unravel her world. You're fired, Evans. Right here, right now. Pack your things. You care more about this worthless old man than your job. Fine. Take him with you. You're both finished. The words hit her like a punch to the chest. Her job gone. Her rent impossible. Noah's treatment a dream turned to ash in an instant. The envelope under her mattress might as well have vanished. Her knees weakened, but she refused to move. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "You can't do this." "I just did," Grant snapped, turning his back. Emma's body shook with the weight of despair. The world tilted, collapsing around her. But then something unexpected happened. Walter stirred. Slowly, he pushed himself up, and in that moment, the trembling stopped. His back straightened, his voice, once frail and broken, rang out clear and commanding. "She just passed the test," he said, his tone cutting through the stunned silence. "And now she will never walk alone again." Gasps rippled through the diner. Emma stared at him in disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Walter Hayes, the shivering vagrant, was no longer what he seemed. And the game was about to change. The diner was frozen in silence. Forks hovered in mid-air, conversations cut short, and even the rain seemed to pause outside the windows as Walter Hayes, the frail old man Emma had fed, defended, and sheltered, stood tall before them all. His trembling was gone. His voice, once a rasp of weakness, now rang with authority that could not be ignored. Emma blinked through tears, unable to reconcile the transformation. This wasn't the broken figure she had guided to a booth, the man who had wept over a bowl of soup. This was someone else entirely. Walter's pale eyes swept the room, settling on Emma with a steady gaze. "My name," he said, his voice firm, "is not Walter Hayes." He straightened his shoulders, and for the first time he looked like a man accustomed to command. "It is William Finch." The name rippled across the diner like a shock wave. A few customers gasped outright. Others exchanged incredulous whispers. Finch, the name stamped across skyscrapers, charities, and news articles. William Finch, the billionaire known for his fortune and his unusual habit of avoiding the spotlight. Emma's lips parted, but no sound came out. She shook her head in disbelief. I don't understand." Finch stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "For years, I've wondered if kindness still had a place in this world. Not the kind that comes with cameras or applause, but true, selfless kindness, the kind that costs something. So I put on an old coat and walked among the forgotten. I wanted to see if anyone would look past the dirt, past the weakness, and still see a human being." His words sank into Emma's chest like heavy stones. She thought of the soup, the sandwich, the $10 that had meant Noah's medicine. Each choice had cut her deeply. And yet this man, this stranger, turned titan, had been watching all along. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sleek black phone, its screen glowing to life with a touch of his thumb. His tone shifted again, crisp and commanding. "Harrison," he said, speaking into the receiver, "it's done. Prepare the paperwork for Noah's Hope Foundation. Initial endowment, $50 million. And send a car to the Rusty Fork immediately." Emma's knees nearly gave out. Noah's Hope, she whispered, clutching the edge of the booth for support. Finch's eyes softened. "Your brother will never worry about treatment again. Not for a month." Not for a year. For his lifetime. His care will be covered. And this, he gestured toward her, this foundation will be yours to lead. I need someone who understands what desperation feels like, someone who refuses to turn away. Her mouth went dry. But I'm just a waitress. I don't know how to. You know how to care. Finch interrupted gently. That's something money cannot buy, nor schools teach. The rest we'll handle together. From this moment forward, Emma, you are the executive director of Noah's Hope Foundation. With a salary, with a home, with everything you and your brother need. The room erupted, customers whispering furiously, phones lifted to capture the scene. And then came the twist Emma hadn't anticipated. A man in the corner booth stood up sheepishly, holding his phone high. He had recorded the entire confrontation, Mr. Grant's cruelty, Emma's defiance, Walter's revelation. Within minutes, the video spread across social media like wildfire. By evening, it was everywhere. Waitress fired for feeding homeless man, turns out he's a billionaire. Headlines screamed outrage. Viewers poured out support for Emma, admiration flooding in from across the country. But not all the attention was kind. The Rusty Fork diner became the center of a storm it could not weather. Negative reviews crushed its reputation overnight. Crowds of protesters gathered outside, chanting against cruelty and greed. Within weeks, Mr. Grant's empire of cheap meals and cheaper wages crumbled under the weight of public fury. For Emma, the shift was dizzying. One moment she was jobless, terrified of losing everything. The next, she was whisked into a black car with tinted windows, Finch at her side, the city rushing past. Relief coursed through her veins so powerfully, it felt like a physical release. All replaced despair, vindication, replaced shame. In the space of a single afternoon, Emma Clark's life had been turned upside down. She had lost everything only to discover she had gained more than she had ever dared to dream. 2 months later, winter sunlight spilled through the tall windows of a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center. Inside, the air smelled faintly of chlorine and hope. Noah Clark, 12 years old, and brimming with nervous excitement, was waist-deep in a hydrotherapy pool. Beside him, a therapist guided his movements, steady hands, supporting his frail frame as his legs pushed gently against the water. For a moment, there was hesitation. And then, a miracle. Noah laughed bright, unrestrained, as he took his first small steps in years. Water rippled outward like applause, carrying his joy to every corner of the room. On the other side of the glass wall, Emma watched her heart nearly bursting. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't bother wiping them away. She pressed a hand to the glass, whispering to herself, "We made it. Noah, we really made it." Her life had changed just as dramatically. No longer in a grease-stained uniform, she now wore tailored clothes, her hair no longer hurriedly tied back, but falling freely over her shoulders. Every morning, she walked into a bright, modern office, her office with the nameplate reading Executive Director Noah's Hope Foundation. On her desk sat a single object that never left her sight, the small wooden night chess piece. Its edges were worn smooth, its presence a constant reminder. One unexpected move, one quiet choice of compassion, had rewritten the course of her life. The foundation grew quickly, fueled by Finch's wealth and Emma's vision. Applications poured in from families suffocating under the weight of medical debt, their stories heartbreakingly familiar. Parents choosing between rent and treatment, children losing precious time waiting for care insurance, refused to cover veterans struggling to afford therapy after injuries. Each file Emma opened was another mirror of the struggle she and Noah had faced. But this time, she held power in her hands, the power to say yes. Funding was approved for a child in Ohio who needed a custom prosthetic leg. A small town in Kansas received a transport van so cancer patients could reach their chemotherapy appointments. A single mother in Texas received the full cost of her son's heart surgery. Emma read every case with care, never forgetting the nights she had gone hungry to save $1. She knew better than anyone that behind every number was a face, behind every bill a story. And then one afternoon, fate brought back a face she thought she'd left behind. She was walking through the foundation lobby when she saw her Dana, the co-worker who had once mocked her kindness. But Dana was different now. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes hollowed by exhaustion. She clutched a thin jacket tight around herself as if it were armor against the world. Their eyes met and shame flickered across Dana's face. "Emma," she said quietly, almost like a question. Emma stepped closer. "Dana, what are you doing here?" Dana swallowed hard. I need work. After the diner closed, I couldn't find anything steady. Nobody wants to hire me. I shouldn't have come. After the way I treated you." Her voice broke, and for once the sharpness was gone. All that remained was weariness. Emma studied her for a long moment. She remembered the biting words, the smirks, the cruelty. She remembered, too, what Finch had told her kindness mattered most, when it was least deserved. So she smiled softly. "The foundation is growing. I need an assistant, someone organized who knows pressure, who understands struggle. The pay is fair, the benefits are good." Dana's eyes widened, filling with tears. Why would you help me after everything I did to you?" Emma placed her hand lightly on the night chess piece she still carried in her pocket. Her answer came with calm certainty. "Because kindness isn't earned. It's given. And sometimes people just need one unexpected move." Donna broke, covering her face as silent tears fell. For the first time, she looked at Emma not with envy, but with gratitude. Emma's story was never about being rescued by wealth. It was about how her quiet compassion lit a fire in someone powerful enough to change the world. A sandwich, a bowl of soup, 10 crumpled dollars, these were the sparks that grew into a blaze of hope for countless families. The true wealth we leave behind is not measured in dollars or possessions, but in the lives we touch and the kindness we choose when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. And if you'd like more stories that warm the heart and stir the soul, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments, what's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Because sometimes all it takes to change the world is one unexpected move.